Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna start my timer. So first, thank you everyone for the opportunity to come and share my story. My path to reading for a long time was based on it's only me out here. No one else understands what I'm going through. No one else gets it, that I look at food the way just differently than other people do. And coming to program, meeting others who do basically the same things we do. We can all relate at a certain level. There's just different shades of gray, but we all have this disease that we're actively fighting. So my story is an example of how this illness affects everyone, no matter creed, nationality, age, background. It's not like just because, if your parents got divorced or were together or you had an unhappy child, whatever it is, none of that matters. The illness just strikes randomly, but equally to all of us. So my story sounds pretty ideal. My parents love each other. They're still together to this day. Loving family, great schools, great friends. I never really had many issues with, at least not traditional, but like bullying or anything like that. I was skinny. I just ate a lot. When I was a kid, my parents were just like, he's growing, he plays a lot of sports, not a huge deal. He needs it. He needs the calories. That's what young boys who are growing do. But early on, I always ate all the candy or all the sugar, whatever it was. I ate all of it because I had to. I loved it. And it never clued into me that this was the early forms of my illness, of being a compulsive eater. And so I remember being very young and I was limited. My only limiting factor was what my parents could buy. So if it was in the pantry, I would try to eat it. And I never cared. I hid it, right? You'd lie about it, you do whatever. And this is just one of the forms in which we come to see our diseases. It's not always about the food. In fact, sometimes it's never about the food. It's about other stuff that's going on underneath that we're trying to figure out and get at the root at. And that's what the program helps us do. So I found myself that my disease wasn't just hurting me physically because I started eating a little more than I needed to. And while I looked fine, my stomach didn't always feel great. And so we can all relate to that feeling of just, why did I do this to myself? And that cycle that we go through of guilt, of feeling awful, knowing what you're going to do, but doing it anyway. And then waking up the next day, seeing a little bit of daylight and being like, that was the last time. Tomorrow, I'm going to start a training program, a nutrition program, run a marathon, whatever it is. Do whatever's on Instagram, the latest fad. I did it all. But that wasn't me yet. That came later. Early on, at least in high school, I found that the root of what was going on when I went to food was loneliness. If I was feeling down because, I don't know, a girl I asked out said no, or if my soccer team or I lost a match in tennis, or if my soccer team lost or I didn't play well. And it was me not accepting the world as it is. And I'll speak a little bit throughout my talk about the promises of the program. What does the program promise you? And one of the promises is it's not just, oh, hey, you're going to eat less, part of it. But there's also a growing acceptance of the world around you. And I couldn't accept the world the way it was when I was a teenager. I wanted to be the top athlete. I wanted to be the top student. I wanted to do all these things, basically be the best at everything, which is impossible. That person doesn't exist. And when I didn't get it, because either it's life and you don't always get what you want, or because I didn't put in the hard work and still expected the outcome. Like if I took a test, didn't do well, and felt aggrieved by it, that was me not accepting reality, accepting the world for what it was. And I went to food because that gives you a sense of control. It gives you a sense of comfort, false at best. And it was in high school that I noticed a pattern. That's really when I look back, I always ate a lot, but I never tied it to anything until middle school, high school. And that's when the social pressures of like wanting to be a certain way, having the right friends. I had a great friend group, but I was blinded to the beauty of what was in front of me, of the gifts that I had in front of me, because that wasn't good enough. I wanted this. This is what I see on TV. This is what I see on movie, whatever it is. And I wanted to be something that isn't me. And when you're blind to that, when you don't accept who you are, you feel out of control. And that's when you go to food, because food's easy. Food's there. And in this country, processed food, the worst kind of food, is cheap and readily available wherever you want. So really the transition for me was when I came from high school to college. And that was really the jump in independence, where I saw that, there's no one over my shoulder to see what I'm eating. Sure, there was a little bit of lying, dishonesty. I'd go to the dining hall really early or really late so that I would eat alone and nobody would see me or judge me for how many times I went up to get food or seconds or even thirds. And that blocked me from being able to form meaningful relationships because, again, you're being dishonest. Meals are meant to be shared socially and enjoyed with friends, to share things, to talk about things, to just hang out. And when you're instead focused on food and eating as much of it as you can, what are you doing? You're hurting yourself by physically, obviously, but you're also hurting yourself because you're depriving yourself of those meaningful connections, of that socialization factor that, for me, would have helped my first year in college when I did awful. I failed 2 classes. I never went to class. I was depressed. And my only friend was food because I couldn't fit in. But looking back, did I even try? Did I give it a good, honest effort? And I don't think I can say that, because the first instance of something hard, a wall, maybe you hang out with some people and you don't really meet or vibe. You're just like, oh, I'm done. I'm going back to my dorm. I'm going to eat a bunch of food. And that's when it happened. So it becomes more and more, I think, I found in my experience, the more and more life throws hard things at you, you go to food, because the older you get, the more complicated life you get, the more complicated life gets. And that's not always a bad thing, but we need to have spiritual tools that will allow us to deal with the hard. In fact, you're going to deal with death. You're going to deal with breakups. You're going to deal with some really hard things, because if you live long enough, you're going to see it all. That's life. It's not easy for anybody. We all have different journeys. Some journeys might be harder than others, but any little thing.
I just got on.
Looks like someone needs to mute, please.
Yeah, that would be good, Roger. Thanks.
I'm going to pause for a second.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot for calling, Roger. Bye. And thanks. Bye.
Sorry about that. Could whoever just mute, please? Or whoever.
Sorry about that.
You're okay. As I was saying, life is going to throw huge challenges at you. And if you don't have those spiritual tools, you won't know how to deal with them. And I didn't have those for many, many years. In college, my challenge was fitting in. And I almost dropped out. I ended up staying and graduating, but it was a hard 4 years because I used food to help get me through the hard times instead of using the tools of the program, which I didn't know back then. And it took me a long time to figure out what my problem was. And I thought it was food. So after college, when I stopped being as active and my weight started going up, I saw food as the culprit. I saw food as my weight, or whatever it was, as the issue. So I went to the human solutions that we all are so aware of. The latest fad diet. I tried keto, vegan, high protein, high carb, intermittent fasting. I trained for a marathon. I took a triathlon. Man, you name it. I tried it all. And the ending was always the same. I'd be good for a few hours, a few days, maybe a month. And then one big binge. Or whatever I wanted to accomplish, I would accomplish. And then a huge binge would follow because I met my goal. I'm here. I deserve this, right? And really, when that was all over, because all those programs come to an end, they're designed to have an endpoint. You're back to where you started. Again, it's that cycle. So for me, as I progressed into my 20s, my weight started going up. I was just not taking care of myself, and physically I didn't look great. If you're feeding your body a lot of bad food, like a car, if you never change the oil, or you give it bad oil and bad fuel, it's not going to feel great. And my body just wasn't great at all. I just felt so terrible all the time. And I thought that was normal, and it's not. But for a long time, I still kept going in the cycle of just like, what's the latest thing, the latest hook that will help bring my weight down or help me look like this? If I look like that person, I'll be happy. And again, that failure to accept that that person looks like that because they live a really strict lifestyle. If you want to look like one of those CrossFit guys, you need to train 7 days a week, 6 hours a day. 1 hour a day here and there isn't going to cut it. But in my mind, I'm like, no, I worked out for an hour. I deserve this. And our disease is degenerative. It gets worse. It gets worse. It doesn't get better. And I saw that. And as I progressed into my 20s, that I was ordering out more often. My go-to food. If you called the local delivery place and they recognize your name and your exact order, you're like, huh. Or if you go through the drive-through and you order the same thing and you know exactly to the cent how much it's going to cost you, that's not good. That's not, I was eating this food, and it's not about this food being evil, right? Like I don't want to vilify this particular item or that particular item. We all have things that we need to be able to coexist with food. It's not like alcohol that we can just cut out entirely. So in that sense, we are different from alcohol. But in another, we suffer from the same thing. We can't be around it because we find ourselves, it's step one. We're uncontrollable around food. And what really changed was I went through a big breakup last year, and I thought I was doing okay. I was meeting with my therapist. My therapist has done wonders for me. But one thing she couldn't help me was my weight. And I remember being so angry that I don't even remember what it was. I signed up for a dance class, and there were these teenage girls in there, and they were so good. And I was struggling in the back because I have no rhythm. And I remember being so angry at myself for this and going home and eating food. And when I talked it through with my therapist, I was lying to myself. How could I compare myself to a person? These girls train every day. They dance every day. This has been my 4th class. I've danced maybe 4 hours in my life. Of course I was going to be terrible. So again, it's like lack of acceptance, lying, dishonesty, my ego thinking that I need to walk in there and be the biggest, the best dancer ever. Again, our personal defects are coming through. And this is where we see that it's not food. It's the defects that are affecting us that we need to look at and address in order to work through our issues with food. And that's really what the program helps us do. So when the pandemic started, it got bad several times a week. Like, it was definitely, I've hit rock bottom before, but this is definitely it. I remember looking at my credit card bill and just, man, my trash, just like seeing boxes of like the typical things. And I'm like, am I buying I'm not buying actual food that we should all try to eat a little bit of, like veggies and fruit and stuff like that. None of that was in my life. And my therapist looked at me honestly and said, I've helped you with some other items, but I can't help you with the food. We tried, I'm not sure what works. Do you want to look at OA? And I remember thinking, is this for me? What is this? I called into a speaker meeting very similar to this. And I heard this woman just tell me her life story, tell me I saw myself in her. And I'm like, no way. This is like looking into a mirror. This is not real. But also how easy she made it sound. Like, how did she get this without, like, one day it was just turned off? And it was. If you follow the steps, it will be gone for you as well. But what I didn't know was that it's not easy. It takes hard work, and it takes hard work every day. You don't slouch on working the steps. You work 10, 11, and 12 every day. So I met my sponsor, and that was in April, May, and I started working the steps, and I've been living the steps every day. And I would be lying to you if I said that I was 100%. It can be a little controversial to say that I am not, I would say I am 99% recovered. It's still there. Every day I feel it a little bit. And I would be lying if I said, oh, I'm never going to binge again, blah, blah, blah. Because every journey is different, and the program doesn't expect perfection. It just demands progress. It demands that you get a little bit better each and every day. So yesterday, when I tricked myself and said, oh, I'll just see if this local chain delivers to where I live. I'll just look at the menu. I'm not going to order, but I'll just check it out. I knew where that was going. I knew exactly where that was going. And I was able to reach out to my sponsor, 10-step that right away, and it was gone. I 10-stepped it, I did service, I got out of my head, addressed the personal defect, whatever, I was worried about something, addressed what was worrying me by serving others, and was able to kind of beat back this illness. And that's really what the program is about. This promise is about living a daily existence where I'm honest with myself, where I accept the world as it comes, not as I want it to be. The world right now is a hard place, but I'm able to find my place in it and make it work. It's hard, but you make it work despite everything that's going on. I don't need to go to food to deal with the challenges that we all face day to day. The pressure of possibly losing your job, the pressure of having to move. A lot of changes have come up this year, but I have the spiritual tools that allow me to face it forward with honesty, with empathy, attack my personal defects because I have the spiritual tools and I am recovered. And part of that recovery involves helping others, inspiring others, and hopefully this story will reach one of you the way that story reached me so like almost forever ago, but only 8 months ago. So thank you all for having me and having the opportunity to share my story. My number is in the chat box.